The Curtiss Jenny is probably one of the best recognized aircraft of the First World War, the irony, of course, being that it never actually saw combat during the Great War. It was employed primarily as a trainer in all capacities, whether it was as a bomber, as a fighter aircraft. This was one of the primary trainers of the First World War, not only for American pilots, but also for Canadians, British. Many pilots from the Allies flew in a Jenny as their first experience of manned flight. The design goes back a little bit before World War I. In fact, its predecessor, the JN-3, was used in what you could call limited combat, limited being the operative term, because they spent more time on the ground as a result of dust in their carburetors. They were used by the United States Army in the incursion into Mexico against Pancho Villa. And it was from that JN-3 that the now very well-known JN-4D eventually was derived. The plane is also known for its use after World War I, primarily by what were known as barnstormers, kind of jack-of-all-trades, daredevil pilots who would go out into the American Midwest and also in the American Northeast, flying these aircraft for the general public to give them their first taste of what it might be like to fly in an open cockpit aircraft. The JN-4s eventually fell out of use, partly because of the institution of stricter regulation on the operation of aircraft, but they remain today a fairly iconic example of early American ingenuity with regards to mass production of aircraft. This particular example was built in 1918 by the St. Louis Aircraft Company, just a large contract from the Curtiss Company. There was such a demand for these airplanes, and that high demand during the war led to a great number surplus after the war, and then going into private hands. They became, I guess you could say, the backbone of civil aviation in the immediate aftermath of World War I, and it was Charles Lindbergh's very first airplane that was a JN-4D Jenny.
And what makes this specific Jenny so unique here at the museum?
The very fact that this particular aircraft at the museum is an original Jenny. Most of the World War I era airplanes contained at the Military Aviation Museum represent fine recreations of aircraft from that period. However, this particular example was built originally in 1918 by the St. Louis Aircraft Company, and it was restored over about a 3 or 4 year period by an Argentinian company called AeroHistoric. It has only recently arrived at the Military Aviation Museum, has not yet actually seen a public demonstration flight, but we hope to be able to fly it at the next Flying Proms in June of 2014. Otherwise, the plane can be viewed 7 days a week during regular business hours. That's 9 to 5 right here at the Military Aviation Museum in Virginia Beach.